Welcome to the Toastmasters podcast, the official podcast of Toastmasters International. Hello, everybody. This is Greg Gazin. Effective storytelling skills are a crucial key to effective communication, and a well-told story goes a long way in making a presentation come alive. What some may not know is that there are valuable lessons to be learned from the world of audiobooks. Our guest today is Karen Merritt, a multifaceted performer, actor, voiceover artist, and producer whose voice and presence have enriched a wide range of storytelling formats. As an audiobook narrator, Karen brings emotional depth and clarity to every project, drawing on her background in theater. Her performances span Shakespeare dramas, contemporary plays, commercials, corporate videos, animation, and educational video games. Karen has a plethora of acting credits, including her latest audiobook, Call to Embrace, Hope of Calling His Name by Mary Ann Landers, available on audio and other major audiobook platforms. Karen also serves as a standardized patient, helping medical professionals develop stronger empathy skills through role-playing scenarios. And as a teaching artist, she shares her craft with aspiring performers of all ages. Karen has been a Toastmaster since November 2022 and is a member of Elegant Speakers and Listeners, ESL, Toastmasters Club, where she currently serves as Vice President of Membership. She's also one of the experts featured in Theater of the Year, Uncover Storytelling Tips from Audio Narrators by Karen Neal. Joining us today from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Karen Merritt, welcome to the Toastmasters podcast.
Thank you, Greg, for having me on your podcast. It's quite an honor.
Voice acting, audio narrating, that's so cool, but of course, now I'm a little intimidated.
No need to be intimidated.
When I think of voice acting, I think of The Simpsons. When I think of audio narration, I think of books on tape or Audible, like someone is reading words from a book. So to kick things off, Karen, can you tell us, are these the same, or is narrating a form of voice acting, or is it in fact just public speaking?
I would say there is a lot of crossover between narration and voice acting and public speaking. However, they are very different in each category. I think that they all include storytelling in some way, shape, or form. So whether you are in an animation, you're part of a story, or if you're in an audiobook, you have to do all the voices in the story. And with public speaking, you are yourself. And so you're telling your own story or relaying stories from other parts of your life, of people you know, et cetera, et cetera.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to learn a lot more. For me, I know as a speaker and an interviewer, when I've tried to take perhaps an article that I've written and read it and record it, it just doesn't feel natural. And for me, it's like I'm in my head. I'm more concerned about tripping over my own words. So I was really fascinated when in the article you said, I love this, all voice actors, whether they're narrators or not, need good storytelling skills. So I started to think it's more than just reading out loud. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you meant?
Well, sure. So, in addition to being clear, I'm sure as you read a story, you want to speak it very clearly, but it can come across as very rote if you're just reading the story.
Mhm.
However, if you think about what the story is trying to tell and who you're talking to and trying to make it exciting and connecting with your audience, that's where the magic happens.
So where do you start? If you have a piece that that you need to narrate, where do you start?
I read the material, become so familiar with the material. And then I try to think about how I feel about the material. How does the story strike me? What is the genre? Is it a very serious story or is it a humor story? And then I go through and think about who is this story? Who am I telling this story to? So for instance, if it's a children's story, then I might be speaking to a 6-year-old, or if it is a story that is related to caregiving, say, and I want to encourage caregivers that are caring for their loved one, then I might have a different tone. But that's where I start, being very familiar with the story.
So in many respects, like a speech, you want to know who your audience is. And in the article, you also mentioned about grabbing the listener's attention right away. How do you do that with an audiobook? You have no audience in front of you.
Well, it always starts with the material. So if you have great material, often the writer will do the heavy lifting through the writing. So you'll start with that. And then I would say make sure that your voice is inviting, clear, that you are coming from a perspective that really draw people in. Sometimes you do it by something very sudden. So if your story starts with something sudden, then you might want to grab people's attention through surprise. For instance, if it's a thriller story, then you say it was dark and people came inside the house. And just starting like that. Or if it is a children's story, say, you could welcome them. Hello, it's nice to see you today. That's one example.
So you take the space between the words as a pause, and then you take that exclamation point and you hit home with it. That's great.
Right. Always starts with the material, though.
Yeah. You also mentioned the perspective of the character.
If you're reading a story, you need to come at it from the point of view of the author, perhaps. For instance, I narrated a biography of a woman who was telling the story about her caregiving experience with her parents. And so I had to really get inside her head, and I interviewed her to find out where she was coming from as the author of this story. And that really helped me to understand emotionally, especially where she was coming from so that I could connect better with my audience.
This might sound like a strange question, but what does perspective sound like?
Perspective could be anything. It could be anything.
Good answer.
It really could be. So, for instance, if my author was very bitter about her past with her parents, she could come at it from the point of view of, "Oh, my childhood was not so great. I really didn't like growing up in a household with 8 other children." Or if she liked being in a household of 8 children, and this is just fictional, this is not anybody I know, maybe she would say it from a different perspective, like, "I really enjoyed growing up with my siblings, and I loved spending time with them." And you can hear the difference in the voice of how each one portrays a different emotion.
So in Toastmasters, it sounds like vocal variety.
Oh, yeah, vocal variety for sure. So with vocal variety, the emotion can be broken down into tone of voice, your pitch, your pace. So for instance, with tone of voice, you might say it with a different emotion. So I might say, if you're a teacher admonishing a child, your tone of voice might be, "Junior, go stand in the corner." And that is a different tone of voice than if you were a nice teacher who said, "Junior, please go stand in the corner." And so your tone is really connected to the emotion and your intention as the character. So if your character is intending to control the classroom, then she might admonish. Or if she wants to make each child behave but also maintain a relationship with them, then she might use a nice voice.
When you said that, I could visualize the teacher. I've been there, done that.
With your pace, you really want to have a pace for audiobooks that is easy to listen to if you're the neutral narrator. So you start off with a steady, even pace because most of the time, people, when they're listening to audiobooks, they're either exercising or doing chores. So they are a little distracted and they're trying to follow the story too. So if you go too fast, it's hard to follow. So that's for audiobook narration. But pace in general, you can really shake it up depending on your character. So if there's an urgency, if you're telling a story about something very scary that you experienced, like, and then there was a dog that came close to me that was going to bite me, then you might increase your pace. Or if you're trying to establish control, like all the bad guys in all the stories, they use a very slow pace because that shows control. If a mob leader was going to control you, they might use a very slow pace because they don't need to go fast. All of their guys are going to do what they say at the drop of a hat. So pacing is really important.
In a movie, you'd probably have this evil music playing in the background.
Yes, yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
And let's see, pitch. Pitch in audiobooks in particular is really important to differentiate the types of voices. So if you have an older person, you might speak with a little bit of a higher voice and a little bit of vocal fry on that. And the vocal fry is that sound that is a little raspy that I'm making. Or if you are portraying a man in a story as a woman, then your tone of voice might go lower and you might be more deliberate in your speech. And these are mere stereotypes, perhaps, but they are helpful to help differentiate the sounds of the voices in your characters.
How do we handle the fact that we're creating image in people's minds? But how do you portray that yourself when you're doing the narration?
When I do narration, I like to put my body into it. In particular, if I am doing animation or if I am in radio drama, which I sometimes do radio drama as well, I like to put my whole body into it because it really affects the way that you say your voices. And you'll watch a lot of actors do this. They'll move their arms up high, and that creates a lot of space in what they're saying. Or if I'm smiling, I'm going to sound a lot different than if I'm not smiling. You can hear the tone of my voice changes just when I smile and I'm just moving my body around.
And sometimes it doesn't have to be exaggerated. It could be something that's just subtle.
Oh, yeah, it could be subtle. When I do long form narration, I sit for a long time because it's too long to stand for that long. But I tend to use facial expressions that can help to create the character and sort of embody the character too. Imagine I have a picture in my head of what the character looks like, and so I might have to move my mouth a little bit to make it a little different, or I might have to breathe a little bit more and just relax.
Hmm. So, how did you learn to match the energy of the narrative?
I think my foundation from theater has really helped me with that. I like to study all of the characters from a theatrical standpoint. You really dig into your characters and you really have to do a lot of research to find out where they're from. How does that make them sound? If they're from a different country or a different region of the United States, how does that affect their accent? How does their social standing affect their tone of voice? For instance, are you a royal person or are you a person without much power at all? And all those little details that you collect help to tell your story.
Interesting. So, it sounds like a lot of the material you have has already been prepared for you. In the article, you mentioned that your own emotional response to a story informs your narration, but there's also a little bit of acting involved. So, how do you tap into that emotion so that it's real, but without overdoing it because you need to have some sort of character reference?
Oh, yeah, that is such a great question. In the theater world, we call it the magic if. So, if you were in the character's shoes, how would you feel personally about that? And so I like to tap into my emotions and really put myself in the situation of the character. As that evokes the emotion, I have to be really careful though to not overdo it like you said because I could be feeling lots and lots and lots of feelings, but if I'm not communicating well enough to the audience, it could really be a distraction. I could be feeling everything and blubbering on the microphone, but if it's too much, then the audience isn't feeling that. And my job as narrator is to help the audience to enter into the feeling of the story.
Mm.
And so I just have to pull it back. My favorite phrase is let the words do the heavy lifting because the words will help the audience to really connect for themselves.
It sounds like with the more experience you have, it becomes a little easier to apply because I'm thinking if I needed to do what you're doing without a lot of practice, I find it more difficult. I've listened to a number of audiobooks. Some of them are phenomenal in terms of the voice you hear, the characters that come out. You can feel that it's real. And there are others, it's like, I don't buy it. It doesn't seem to match.
Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of audiobooks out there, and there are a lot of listeners too, and everybody has their own favorite cup of tea, I suppose. So, what may be really connecting with one person may not connect with another. I agree though. Sometimes if it's too much, it can be distracting, or if an actor has too thick of an accent for you to understand what they're saying, that can be a stumbling block to being able to enter into the story, or if it doesn't come across as authentic.
I think that's the key.
Oh, yeah. Authenticity is key. It is key to, I think, for speeches, especially, and for any kind of show that you're watching. You want to believe in the world that is created.
Yeah. And it's not
Yeah.
something you can do impromptu. It sounds like you need a lot of practice.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yep. It's always a process, always a process.
You mentioned character voices. Now, I know when you're talking about character, it could be male, female, teacher, student, what have you. But I love the character voices. Like, I love Kermit the Frog. Hi ho, Kermit the Frog here.
Oh, very good. Very good.
But what I find for myself is I can do it in short spurts, but to do it for a long period of time, let alone an entire book, what's the secret of really doing a consistently good job?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it is really a challenge. I work with a dialect coach when I start to work on any kind of dialect and just immerse myself in that dialect for a long time. And then after I do all that homework, I just have to throw that away because I need to make it a very subtle version of the accent. There are two different ways to do audiobooks. You could do a full out accent with everything, very broad accent. And like you said, it's hard to maintain that. Or you could do a subtle version of it that's easier to maintain. I also keep a huge spreadsheet of all the characters that I do. The first audiobook that I did had 90 different characters. And for the main characters, I had to find a way to be consistent. So that's closer to my own voice. For the smaller characters, I could go a little broader with the accent on those. That's a lot of fun. But I really think it's important to have a spreadsheet as an audiobook narrator so that you can go back, if in chapter 1 you have one character and then like 5 chapters later the character returns again. You're like, "Oh, what did that sound like?" And then I go back to my notes, listen to how it sounded in the last chapter in the chapter 1, and then I also read over the notes and what are the relationships between the characters, what's going on in the scene, what is their motivation. I have to redo all of that before I step back into the character again.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking of some of the actors, and of course, some of the names are eluding me right now. There's a show called The Mentalist, older show, and there's a show called House,
Hmm.
and even Nicole
Mhm.
Kidman, for
Oh
example.
yeah. Oh yeah.
None of these main actors, they're from the UK or Australia, but yet they do series or movies, entire movies, and entire series with an American accent. And it's consistent. And it's funny because there have been a few instances where I've listened to an actor in a show and then I hear them being interviewed on a talk show and I go, oh, that's what they sound like. And it's amazing that they can maintain it for that period of time.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is. Those people that you mentioned are truly remarkable, especially House. I didn't know that he was is he British? When I heard his real voice as opposed to his American accent, I was blown away. For the big name actors, they have whole teams of people around them that can keep them on task. When I look at some of the audiobooks that are my favorites, there's a whole big production team. So they have engineers, they have directors that can go in and say, "Oh, wait a minute, you're sounding a little off on this section here. Go back and re-record that." For me, I have to self-edit and self-direct, and I also get input from the rights holder, who is either the author or the publisher, and then, they can give me notes as well.
With the character voices, for example, perhaps you're doing an animation. How do you come up with original voices?
Hmm. I use my own voice. I have a limitation with my own voice. I'm not a kind of impersonator actor, but I like to start from myself. And then I do think about all of those tools like tone and pitch and urgency and perspective of the character. Where are they coming from? What do they want? And the emotion behind it too. With animation, you have to have super high energy. If you listen to animation, a lot of the animation is super high energy, as well as commercial work too. If you listen to commercials, the voices are often high energy for the hard sell commercials,
Mhm.
and then for the softer sell commercials, maybe it's like the girl next door kind of voice. So you really have to know your audience to be able to produce that.
Because I'm thinking when we do presentations, it's very powerful to use active dialogue instead of, the teacher told him to go into the corner. You go, Junior, go to the corner is more
Mhm.
powerful. So I'm thinking how powerful that could be when people are doing speeches on stage or even in any type of presentation.
Oh, yeah. For my local Toastmasters club, I love when I watch speeches where the speaker is becoming the other character in their speech. And so they'll have a little dialogue with themselves. And it is so entertaining to watch because you can hear the perspective of, say, the latest speech I heard was a mother and a son. The mother was talking to the son and she had her mom voice. And then she switched it over very quickly to her child voice. And it's just really entertaining to watch that kind of a thing.
I remember one speech and the person only had one word that he used a different voice. And it's funny. It was no. And it was funny because it was afterwards everyone would go, no.
Oh, I love it.
I know you've done so many voices, you've portrayed so many different characters. Do you have one that's perhaps a favorite or most memorable?
Hmm. In recent days, I've been doing a lot of young people recording, so stories for young children, and I was recently asked to do a Mother Goose voice. So, I developed a voice that was very distinct, I think, and she was a little authoritative, but warm as well. I've enjoyed doing that one recently. And then this coming weekend, I am doing A Christmas Carol where I play charitable person number 2. And so I'm looking forward to doing that as well.
I like Bullwinkle the Moose. Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
I love that. I love that. I like the original Bullwinkle show as opposed to the newer one.
Yeah.
I love that.
Folks, I guess we're dating ourselves here.
Yes, for sure.
So let's get a little personal, if you don't mind, Karen. You've had a fascinating career spanning acting, directing, teaching, and voice work. Can you share a little bit about what inspired you to transition into audiobook narration and voice acting?
Oh, I'd love to. I love reading, first of all, and that drew me to theater, which I studied in college. I loved just all the different characters. I loved becoming different characters, and I could kind of hide behind those characters and learn about all different types of people of the world. I just loved it. And then I did a lot of theater in my younger days, and then I wanted to start a family. And so my husband and I, we started our family, and I learned very quickly that for me personally, I just could not maintain a stage life during that time when my children were very young because it requires a lot of evenings and weekends. And so I thought, I still want to be creative. I want to have more control over my time. So I got into audiobook narration. And at the time, it became possible because the technology changed and I was able to edit and create my own studio and do all of those things through some training that I received, and it just worked out great. I was able to record in my downtime and sometimes in the middle of the night when the children were quiet. I just got into it that way, and over the years I've been able to keep it up, and so I just love the option of having the freedom to record things at my own pace and on my own time.
It's great to be able to continue what you were passionate about, but it just looks a little different.
Yep, yep, it's a little different, and now I'm an empty nester, so I'm returning to some of those earlier things as well, and so it's exciting to always be growing and learning.
It
Yep.
sounds like one thing that you seeked out was Toastmasters. You've had a vast career. What made you decide to seek out this wonderful organization?
Oh, I'm so thankful for Toastmasters. In college and undergrad, I had a fear of public speaking, and I took speech communications 3 times because the first 2 times I dropped out. I was too nervous to get up in front of the class. And then the third time, I only passed the class, which was a requirement, because my professor was kind enough to let me do the speech with her one on one in her office. So she was so kind, and I just am so grateful for that. And then flash forward ahead, I decided, I really need to get better at public speaking because despite being an actor and performing on the stage for thousands of people, I still have a fear being myself in front of hundreds of people. I wanted to get into more teaching, and I realized, oh boy, I'm going to have to stand up in front of a class. I thought, I'm going to go and check it out. I had a friend who did comedy improv, and her boyfriend was president of a club, and so I visited, and I became hooked. I thought, this is an area I really need to grow in, and I had lost my confidence, and so I wanna regain my confidence, and meeting by meeting, Toastmasters is doing just that for me.
Mm. How has it improved your storytelling and your voice acting skills?
It's made me aware of how to authentically bring myself to the table, so I don't have to be a character, but I can still be authentic as myself, telling a story just like I would be telling a friend a story one-on-one. I could make my friend laugh by putting on these different characters, but it's still a part of me telling this story. And I think Toastmasters has helped me to find my own voice, and also just as we go through the curriculum, it talks about tone and pitch and rate and all of those skills, and it really makes me think, oh yeah, I guess I can transfer some of those acting skills that I had into my speeches, and I don't have to be like a dry professor voice speaker, but I can actually be fun when I tell my stories by incorporating a lot of those different types of storytelling techniques.
Well, that's great that Toastmasters is helping you excel in an area that you've already been doing quite well. And folks, if you've discovered how audiobooks can help you with your storytelling and your presentation skills, I encourage you to share this episode with your friends, family, and fellow Toastmasters. You can find the Toastmasters podcast at toastmasterspodcast.com, toastmasters.org, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. And also, if you thought audiobooks, aha, then what about singing as another secret weapon? If you're now even more curious, then stay tuned for an upcoming episode in October where we speak with recording artist and voice coach Jillian Mitchell. And don't forget to check out Karen Neal's article, that's Karen with a C, Theater of the Year, Uncover Storytelling Tips from Audio Narrators, which also has additional strategies to become a strong storyteller and more great tips from former Toastmaster Thomas Miller. Karen, as our time is coming to an end, would you be so kind as to share with us one tip or piece of advice to help people get started if they want to be able to use audio to help improve their presentation skills and, of course, their story speaking skills?
Oh, sure. I would say if you are working on your voice and trying to tell a story, I would start by reading stories and recording them and just listening to yourself. It's really hard to listen to yourself at first, but then after a while, you can really begin to find ways to improve and you get comfortable and you can try all the tricks that we talked about in this podcast. And then for me personally, Pathways Level 3, Connecting with Storytelling, is really a great place to start because it breaks down all the different techniques that you can use.
Yeah, it's a great idea to start with the low hanging fruit. And yes, getting used to listening to one's own voice can be very daunting.
Yes, you get used to it though, really. It gives you the benefit of just hearing your voice instead of relying on any physical way that you present yourself, but you can just hear yourself vocally and then you can really work on your vocal variety.
Karen Merritt, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. We wish you all the best in your.
I love it.
Hi ho, Kermit the Frog here. Karen, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Why, thank you, darling. Well, thank you so much for having me on your program, and I hope that everyone gets the courage to try things for themselves.